السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. I must say that it's good to be back here in Ann Arbor, and I don't remember when I was here the last time, but I was in this very masjid, and maybe it was 2003, 2004, I don't recall, but subhanAllah, it feels like just yesterday. Everything is very familiar, you know, everything is very familiar, so it's very good to be back. And I remember when I was here at that point, Ann Arbor was the second best place to live in the United States. And sometimes it was in the top 5. Is it still there now? No?
Do you think so?
Do you think so? Okay. So anyways, it was very nice here. My dear brother Islam al-Murad, if some of you remember him, he was nice and he brought me down. I think we spent only 2 days, but it was a very jam-packed 2 days, let me put it that way. And I actually came to do the Shahada workshop on a Saturday, and I believe I left on a Sunday. So, yeah, I love this place, and I love this masjid, and I have, at least, I've been to so many states that if you ask me if I've been to Kentucky, I don't know if I've been to Kentucky. Maybe I have been. I cannot recall, honestly, because I've been to so many places. But this is one of the places that I remember everything, the colors of the masjid and everything, so at least I feel a connection to the place. So Jazakallah khair for having me once again, and Jazakallah khair to our dear Shaykh Kamal El-Mekki. The lecture I was asked to deliver is basically an old lecture that I've given before, so some of you may have heard it online before or not. But and it's entitled 1,000 Years Ago in Mauritania, and it deals with a specific time period and how Islam spread through certain parts of Africa, or really 1/3 of Africa that we're going to look at, inshallah. And our story begins in the year 440 after the Hijrah. 440 after the Hijrah. So it's almost basically 1,000 years ago, and in the southern part of Mauritania. And at that time, in the southern part of Mauritania, there was a large Berber tribe by the name of Sinhaja. And the tribe of Sinhaja had 2 large branches, one of which was Judala, and the other was Lamtuna. So the tribe of Judala, it was run by a man, or the leader of that tribe of Judala was a man, his name was Yahya ibn Ibrahim al-Judali. He used to run that tribe. And he was not a scholar or a knowledgeable person at all, but he was someone who was really, if you want to describe him within that tribe, he was someone who was upon the fitrah. So his people, the tribe of Judala, they said they were Muslims, but this is where their description and their situation. Basically, alcohol was rampant to the point where people were addicted to alcohol. That means it was that rampant. People were addicted to alcohol. Zina was rampant, so much so that a man would do that with his neighbor's wife, and his neighbor would not complain or become angry, because he in turn is doing it with his other neighbor's wife. And a man would marry more than 4 women. And they really thought they were Muslim by name, so they would marry more than 4 women. Stealing was rampant, the strong would crush the weak, and they thought that they were upon Islam. So Yahya ibn Ibrahim al-Judali, the leader of this tribe, he knew this was wrong, and he wanted to change. He wanted some change to happen to his people, but he wasn't able to because he did not have the knowledge to do so. So this is the first indication of the strong connection between knowledge and da'wah. So because he lacked the knowledge, he was not able to go and to change his people. So he came up with an idea. He said on his way to Hajj, on his way back from Hajj, he's going to bring with him a scholar or a sheikh or a knowledgeable person that will give da'wah to the people of Judala and perhaps change them in that way. So on his way back from Hajj, he stops at the city of Al-Qayrawan, which is in modern-day Tunisia, and he goes to a Maliki scholar there. His name is Abu Imran al-Fasi. So he goes to this sheikh and he describes the situation, how his people are and how their situation is. So the scholar, the sheikh, Abu Imran al-Fasi, he thinks and he decides to send with him a man a well-known Maliki scholar at the time who had a lot of students and he had his own gatherings and his own halaqat. But he decided to send this man with the leader of the tribe of Judada, Yahya ibn Ibrahim. He decides to send with him a man by the name of Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin. Abdullah ibn Yasin. And this is a great name that a lot of people should know, but for the most part, you only find Muslims in western parts of Africa that are more or less familiar with this history. But he's worthy of being known. And like we said, he was a scholar and a sheikh, and he had his people and his classes and his durus, but he decided to leave all that and travel to this virtually unknown place to call people there to Allah Azza wa Jal. So now he starts to travel, and basically Abu Imran al-Farsi, he tells him, go, ya sheikh, with the sheikh, meaning the leader of the tribe of Judala, and call and the people to Islam, or to teach the people their religion. So both now travel, the leader of the tribe, Yahya ibn Ibrahim al-Judadi, and the sheikh that's going with him now, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin. And they start to cut through the Sahara Desert, and they cut through the southern part of Algeria, and cut through the northern part of Mauritania until they got to the southern part where the tribe of Judada was there. And so when they get there, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin, he finds them to be living in a horrible situation. They think they're upon Islam, but they're so far away from Islam. And one of the interesting things is that you see this situation 1,000 years ago, and it was worse than many places today. Like, we don't have, well, maybe to varying degrees, but we don't have it this bad anywhere, maybe with Islam. And so you see that historically there have been ups and downs. So Muslims would be in a very poor position, then they would come up again, and they'd go down, and so on and so forth. So you see, this was a very bad situation, and then it improved basically after the efforts. So he found the situation to be really, really poor, and he starts to call the people to Islam. And immediately the people reject what he's doing. He's forbidding what's evil, he's enjoining what's good, and immediately people start to reject what he's doing. And especially the people that we'll refer to as Ashab al-Masalih. These are people that have an interest, either politically or financially. They benefit from the corruption of society. These people especially didn't want him to give his da'wah and to enjoin what is good, forbid what's evil, because they benefit from the corruption of society. So, and the tribe, the leader of the tribe, Yahya ibn Ibrahim, the leader now, he's not able to help him much, he's not able to defend him much, because his people were undisciplined. The people of his tribe had no discipline. So if he tells them something, they won't listen. They had no discipline. So the sheikh continued with his da'wah, Abdullah ibn Yasin continues with his da'wah, so they threatened him. They said, you better stop what you're doing. And if you don't stop, we're going to beat you physically. And of course, the sheikh doesn't stop. And he continues giving da'wah, and they beat him. And then they physically beat him up, then they threatened him one more time. They said, if you continue, we will kill you, or we'll kick you out of our town. And so the sheikh continues, and so they kick him out of the town. Leave. You're not allowed in here anymore. So what does he do? What are the options? Well, obviously, he can easily tell himself, I've got my students, and I'm known, and I can have my halaqat. I don't need to deal with this. I can go back to my city and resume my classes, and that's da'wah as well. But the Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin, rahimahullah, he had ham, right? When he cared and he had the responsibility, he felt responsible. How can I leave these people, and new generations will be born thinking this is Islam, into this corruption, not knowing Allah Azza wa Jalla, not knowing the proper Islam, the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he couldn't leave. And he did the opposite. So instead of going back to his hometown, he goes to, so this is now from the southern part of Mauritania, he goes to the northern part of Senegal. And he basically, northern part of Senegal, which is today a country that is 90% Muslim. Yeah. So at that point, he goes there, he goes into like a forest, and he settles by the banks of one of the rivers in Senegal. And he sends a note, a letter, to the people of Judala that kicked him out. He sends a note to them saying, I am here in such and such a place by this river. Whoever wants to learn about Islam, let him come to me. So what happened? There were some young men, specifically there were 5 young men, who actually were interested in the da'wah of the Shaykh. But in the village, they couldn't sit with him and learn from him. It would be too known and too public, and they would themselves be persecuted and so on. So when they heard of the new location of the Shaykh, and they could relatively be unharmed when they would go and study with the Shaykh, these 5 young men, their hearts were moved, and they came and they joined the Shaykh in this tent near a river in northern Senegal. So they stayed with the Shaykh, and the Shaykh then began to teach them their aqidah. And he began to teach them, proper Islam. He taught them salah. He taught them their religion. And not only that, he started to teach them other things. He taught them how to fight with a sword. He taught them how to fish, how to hunt, how to cook. So he's teaching them now to become self-sufficient. And so what happened after these 5 young men tasted the sweetness of Iman? Typically what happens when you taste the sweetness of Iman, you want other people to taste it. True or false? Very true. You want other people to experience what you're experiencing. So the Shaykh then, he tells the 5 young men, go back, to your tribe, to Lamtuna, to Judala, and each of you bring one person that you feel would most accept this message. Intelligent, bright, family member, friend, someone who would accept this message, bring that one person. See, this is the difference between the way he did it and the way we would have done it today. Today we love numbers, right? We love numbers, we love loud takbir. So everybody go and bring 20, and who will bring 25, and who will bring 30, takbir, Allahu Akbar. We're excited, right? We love numbers, we love these huge numbers. But that didn't work with numbers. They focused on quality. So 5, he built them up to this level. He said, everyone go back and bring one person. So the 5 went back, and each of them came back with one person. So now the 5 became 10. Then he taught those 10. So this tent that he set up, now it became 2 tents. Then 3, then 4, then 5. So the 5 became 10, the 10 became 20. The 20 became 40, the 40 became 80, the 80 became 160. And then he would break them into groups, so the more experienced would be in charge of 5. Much like how the Prophet ﷺ broke the Medinians after the second pledge of Al-Aqaba into groups under leaders. So it was very organized and very controlled. So now, just by the year, this all started, remember, in the year 440 after the Hijrah. By the year 444 after the Hijrah, just in 4 years, he had with him 1,000 men. 1,000 men who understood their aqidah, who understood their religion, who were also capable warriors, everything. In 4 years, he had 1,000. So, if you can make a comparison, and you will meet people who've been in Dawa'h for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, and they don't have such a number to show for it. Even if it's Dawa'h to non-Muslims, to Muslims, this is incredible. In 4 years, he's got 1,000 fully capable du'at as well. They understand their religion, they're able to teach it to others, and they're capable warriors as well. So when they became 1,000, he says to them, 1,000 will not be defeated because of numbers. What he's trying to say, that because we're so many now, if we're defeated, it's not because we were few, it's because of some other reason. So then he takes the 1,000 capable du'at now, and they all go back to the tribe of Judah. The tribe that 4 years ago kicked him out. One man by himself kicked out, now he comes back 4 years later, and there are 1,000. So this is in the year 444 after the Hijrah, they go back to the tribe and there are 1,000. And now they're more effective when they enjoin what is good and they forbid what is evil. The tribe isn't able now to send them out. And plus they're also from within the tribe. So you don't launch a war against your own children and family members. So they're not able to kick them out now. And they start to call people to Allah Azza wa Jalla, to teach people their religion and to rectify the conditions of the people. So by the year 445, their numbers grew. They became about 1,200. 1,200. Remember what we said in the beginning. It was the major tribe of Sinhaja, and it had 2 large tribes, Judala and Lamtuna. So the tribe of Judala is where all the work is happening. Now, the tribe of Lamtuna, the other large branch, and these were Berber tribes. The other tribe, they were under the leadership of a man. His name was Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. So Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni in 445, he starts to see the positive changes happening in Judala, the other branch. A lot of good things are happening. So he decides that I want the same good things to happen in my tribe, the tribe of Lamtuna as well. So Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, he goes to his people And he says to them, I'm not going to speak to your women, to your children, to anybody, unless you all become Muslim overnight. Someone did this also from the companions. Sound familiar, right? Who did this? Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. Remember? Sa'd ibn Mu'adh goes and he says, speaking to your men and women is haram for me, unless you all became Muslim. And almost overnight, his entire tribe became Muslim. So, Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni does the same thing. He goes back to his people and he says, you all become Muslim overnight, I don't care. So they became Muslim overnight, and now overnight, so there were 1,200, almost immediately now they've become 7,000. And when we say 7,000, we're only counting the men. This is not counting the women and children and everybody else. This is just the men. So the numbers now they multiply by so much in such a short period of time. And shortly after he does that, Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, he passes away, rahimahullah. He brought thousands to Islam, and he died shortly after that. So, when he dies, a relative of his name was Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. This is another great name, and he basically changed Africa. The Africa that we know today, a lot of it is due to this work of the man, Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. So basically, what happens now then is they now continue to spread the da'wah and to spread the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now they're in control of northern Senegal and southern Mauritania. And now at this point they become around 12,000 men. This is just the men, they're 12,000 now. So this is by the year 451 after the Hijrah. 451 after the Hijrah. They're giving da'wah. Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yasin, rahimahullah, is giving da'wah now to neighboring tribes. They're starting to expand now. And he, in one of the tribes, basically, that they're calling to Allah, they resist him and they fight against him, and he is martyred, rahimahullah, in one of these battles in the year 451 after the Hijrah. So this is basically 11 years after he started. 11 years after he was kicked out of the village by himself, he is now martyred, giving da'wah to one of those tribes, and at this point there are 12,000, just the men, not counting the women and children who are upon proper Islam, proper belief, proper understanding of the religion. So now who becomes the leader? Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni. He becomes the leader of what is now known as al-Murabitun. This is, and it's known historically as Dawa'h, the nation of al-Murabitun, and they actually saved the Muslims in Spain a number of times and became a large nation. And in English, they're known as the Muravids. If for those who are interested in reading more about it, it's the Muravids or the Murabitun in Arabic. So this is now 451, where our original Da'iyah, Yusuf ibn Tashfi, or not Yusuf, Abdullah ibn Yasin, passes away in 451. So now Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni is in charge. 2 years later, in the year 453 after the Hijrah, he hears of a dispute in southern Senegal. Remember, they're in control of northern Senegal. He hears of a dispute in an area that's not part under their control, southern Senegal, a dispute between two Muslim tribes. And he knows it's not good for da'wah if they start fighting and there's war and things of that sort. So then he says, okay, I'm going to take some soldiers with me. And at this point there are 14,000 men, the total soldiers that they have. He says, I'm going to take some soldiers with me and I'm going to go down to southern Senegal and fix this problem between these two tribes so we don't have issues. So he takes 7,000 men with him, warriors and du'at. And he goes to southern Senegal to fix the situation. Now in the meantime, who does he put in his place? He puts in his place also a great man, a great da'iyah. His name is Yusuf ibn Tashfin. Or it can also be pronounced Tashafin. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin or Yusuf ibn Tashafin. And basically, he puts him in his place. And basically what he tells him is like, we want you to be the interim president for a little bit. You're in charge for a little while. Just let me go down, fix this problem, and I'll be back, inshallah. So this is 453. He takes 7,000 men, and he goes. So he leaves his cousin, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, in charge. So when he gets there, he fixes the problem, and then he finds other tribes who don't believe in Allah, don't know Islam properly, and he starts to call these tribes to Allah. Every time he goes deeper, he finds another tribe, and they have no clue. They worship sheep and trees and all kinds of things. Shirk. He can't just go back now. So he starts to call them with his warriors now, with his soldiers and his dua. He starts to call these people to Islam. Some of them accepted his message. Some of them fought him. And he moves from one tribe to another until he finally returns back to his original position. So now remember, he left in the year 453. When does he come back finally? He comes back in 468 after the Hijrah. He spent 15 years calling to Allah. Imagine someone tells you, hey, take my seat, I'll be back. And he goes for 15 years. 15 years. He found work to be done. He can't just come back. So he starts calling from one tribe to another for 15 years, calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then the interim president or leader now, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, when he sat for a while in the position of leadership, and then Abu Bakr ibn Umar doesn't return. So he asked about him, where is he? And he finds out that Abu Bakr ibn Umar has gone south. This is now during the time when he was gone. Where is he? He said he's gone further south to give da'wah. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin, he could have just stayed as the king, the president, the ruler, what have you. He said, no, well, if he's going down south to give da'wah, I'll go up north to give da'wah. These are people who don't just sit still. We've got to do some work. Yeah. So he says, if he goes south, I'll go north. So remember, they had 7,000, he took 7, so then he says, I'll take the other 7, I'll go upwards and do some work. So he takes the other half of the 14,000 men, the 7, and he goes northwards into Africa and he starts to call people to Allah. When he goes upwards, he finds other Berber tribes, and again, they've got some strange things going on. He finds the tribe of Ghumara. This was a Berber tribe, and they were under the leadership of a man. His name was Hayyin ibn Mannallah. This man, Hayyin ibn Mannallah, he said he is a prophet, but he's a prophet of Islam. It's not like some new religion. Don't misunderstand the man. He's a prophet of Islam, he said. And he changed the religion of Islam. He changed the Sharia. So basically, he basically made the salawat. There were 2 prayers only per day. One in the early part of in Shuruq and one at the time of Maghrib. So one at dawn, one at Maghrib. The only 2 salawat. And he had his own Quran in the Berber language, in Berberia. And there's no wudu in his Sharia. And there's no ghusl either from any major impurity. And there's no hajj. And he made haram for them. All eggs were haram. Okay? And the female pig was halal. Don't be confused, not the male. The female pig was halal. And fish was haram unless slaughtered. Okay? I mean, see, it's funny to us, but subhanAllah, some people follow this man with his silly rulings, thinking this is a Sharia, this is Islam. You know, fish. Someone tells you slaughter fish, but you know what? Don't say anymore, I know you're a false prophet. Slaughter fish, what are you talking about? We have enough problems with the bihamid, and now we bring fish into the fight. So this was the talk of Ghumara under this man, Hayyin ibn Mannallah. He finds another tribe, Berber tribe as well, by the name of Burghwata. And this tribe is under the leadership of a man, his name was Salih ibn Tarif ibn Sham'un. So you can see from the name of his grandfather that he was of Jewish descent. This man, Salih ibn Tarif, he also said he is a prophet, and a prophet of Islam, not some new religion. Now this guy has, the first guy had little salat, this guy has a lot of salat. The salawat were 10. 5 in the early part of the day, and 5 at the later part of the day. And the wudu, he kept it the same, but you also, when making wudu, you had to wash your belly button, okay? And you had to wash your privates every time for salah. Then he made it fard that you marry a non-Muslim. It's fard. And you can marry more than 4. And you have to grow braids, 2 braids, or you're blameworthy. Okay, it's haram to not grow braids, 2 braids. And again, this was part of this guy's Sharia. And so Yusuf ibn Tashfin then, he also found other things. He found other tribes worshipping sheep, and so basically he started to call them to Islam. And some accepted, and some tribes actually fought against him. The tribe of Burghwata and the tribes of these false prophets, they fought against him, and that's understandable. But very interestingly and very strangely, the tribe of Zanata fought against him as well. And what's strange about this tribe fighting him is that this was a Sunni tribe. They were upon the Sunnah, they did not change the Sharia, their Salah was proper, their Zakah was proper, but they would kill and steal. And they would kill and steal other neighboring tribes and steal from them. Okay? And so basically they made it permissible to kill and steal. There was nothing wrong with it, and that's how their economy flourished, basically, killing and stealing from other groups. Alright? So then what happened is, the problem with them is they made Islam a private affair between you and your Lord. And this should be a good indication and a wake-up call for people today who call for these things. Today, there are Muslims amongst us who say, Islam is a private thing between you and your Lord. Everyone has his prayer rug in his home and that's it. Don't bring Islam into the public sphere. Don't bring it into the political sphere either. Just keep it in your home. If they just read history, they would see what happens when you try to make Islam an issue in your home only. This kind of corruption happens. So even though this group was not deviant in belief or in aqidah, they actually, because they made Islam a private affair in that sense, and they made some haram things halal, they were that astray that they would fight another group upon their same aqidah. So then this is now what's happening with Yusuf ibn Tashfin in the north, calling these different groups, these different tribes, finding false prophets, people who worship sheep, fighting against some, calling some to Islam. Then when Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni returns in 468 after the Hijrah, he finds this man, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, that when he left, he put Yusuf ibn Tashfin in charge of northern Senegal and southern Mauritania. That's it. Yeah? In 453. So he comes back in 468 and he finds now this man that he put in charge of the small areas is in charge now of all of Senegal, all of Mauritania, and all of Morocco, and all of Tunisia, and all of Algeria. All these places now under their control. And he finds the 7,000 men. Remember there were 14, so Abu Bakr ibn Umar took 7, and Yusuf ibn Tashfin took the other 7. But before that he would go twice a year, and they would basically, like let's say, open up a new place. So twice a year he would go and open up a new place. So even though he had so many warriors and so many du'at, and he could have sent them all over the place to spread, he actually didn't do it in such a way. Because since the beginning, their whole idea has been quality. Solidify Iman in people's hearts before you move on to another place. So everything is good, solid, quality. And so basically now, the Murabitin are in control of areas from Tunisia all the way to Gabon, which is really 1/3 of Africa. And just today, the Muslims living in those areas where these three great men started doing their work, the Muslims in these areas today, that are alive today, are about 180 million people. 180 million people. Those are the ones alive today. This was 1,000 years ago. So in the 1,000 years, how many millions have lived and died? And inshallah, anytime those people do anything, act of worship or any good deed, those three original men get reward for that because they were the first people to do that work. And for that, you see the fruits and the benefits and the virtues of giving da'wah. And if you do work, you change people, and every time they do something, you get reward for it. And so, and with that, we basically come to the end of the story. And we could have, when you look at the history of da'wah, you could have looked at, we could start as early as Adam alayhi salam, the first of the prophets and messengers, or you could even look at the da'wah of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, and we could definitely look at the best da'iyah, the da'wah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there'd be so many lessons there. But subhanAllah, sometimes you might look at the Prophet ﷺ and someone will say, well, this was a Prophet of Allah and he was aided by Allah. Then you take examples of the companions, well, these are the best people chosen by Allah to be his companions. And so that's why specifically we went back 1,000 years ago into Islamic history to pick a group of people that didn't necessarily have 5,000 angels behind them or anything like that. And they put effort and they made some work, and look at the results of their excellent work. So it's from the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal that He chose certain people to spread Islam at a time when it was difficult to spread Islam, and there were beatings and potential danger. And then he chose people to spread Islam at a time when it's really easy. And now we're talking about us. And today it's so easy to call people to Islam, true or false. And sometimes you speak to people for mere minutes and they come to Allah Azza wa Jal. But and we're not under any kind of threat, and no one gets beaten. A lot of times people ask me, do you have horror stories where du'at were beaten? And I'll tell you, of the many du'at that I know, I don't know a single story of anyone that was beaten or bottles were thrown at them or anything like that. Alhamdulillah, we deal with really civilized people, and there's law and everything like that. But basically, there's no threat and no danger, and no one is going to light up a barbecue and put you on top of it, as they did to the Sahaba, right? So there isn't really much threat or danger. And I'll conclude with the story of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu. And the companion said, the Quraysh have never heard the Quran being recited in front of them. So Ibn Mas'ud, and you know his description, he was thin, small young man. And he said, I'll go and recite the Quran in public. And they said, no, we want someone who has a tribe that can protect him. So he goes and he stands in the courtyard of the Kaaba and he starts to recite Surah Al-Rahman out loud. So the Quraysh couldn't believe that this young man has the audacity to recite the Quran publicly here in the courtyard of the Kaaba in front of us. So they started to beat him. And they beat him so badly, the narrator says we could not see his nose from the rest of his face. And it got so swollen, we couldn't tell which is which. So then when he comes back, the companion said to him, this is exactly why we didn't want you to go. We wanted someone with a tribe that can defend him. And what does he say to them? This is the caliber of people that we're talking about. What does he say to them? He said, if you wish, I will do the same thing again tomorrow. This is what we're talking about, yeah? And for us, no threats, nothing. We still don't want to do it, right? Bilal radiallahu anhu, the companions asked him, they said, why did you keep saying ahadun ahad while they were torturing you? Bilal radiallahu anhu said, I was saying other things besides ahadun ahad. But I noticed when I said ahadun ahad, it upset them the most, so I said it the most. Isn't that strange? Usually when people are torturing you, you try to say things that are neutral, maybe things that will make them happy a little bit, right? But he was saying what would make them angry the most. This is the kind of conviction that we're talking about here. Strong-spirited people, radiallahu anhu. And Allah chose us to call people to Islam. It's so easy. So many people right at the edge, right there, that just need some encouragement to become Muslim. So with that, inshallah, we'll take some kind of motivation from this story and roll up our sleeves and call people to Allah Azza wa Jal and call Muslims back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not any less important. And our time is up. I'd like to thank all of you for being an attentive audience. Allahumma barak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.